Hey everybody, it's Kevin from Storytellers Union, continuing our countdown of the top 30 albums of 2021. We're beginning today at number 20 with Matthew Sweet. Matthew Sweet's new album is called Cat Paw, and I fell in love with Matthew Sweet the second I saw that anime video for Girlfriend back in the 90s, and have been a fan ever since. If you like the type of power pop that guitar based noisy power pop that Matthew sort of perfected there in the 90s, he never really lost that touch and still has the same guitar tone, the same voice, and the same way with a sticky melody and a hook that becomes an earworm. Because if you like power pop, guitar bass, pop rock at all, he is one to continue to follow even this many years down the road. Number 19, we have Lucero, When You Found Me. Lucero is a country rock act out of Memphis, Tennessee. They've been at it for a very long time also, and they sort of go back and forth between some barroom rock type swagger and sensitive, heart-wrenching balladry. And the thing that always amazes me about Lucero is that they can go back and forth between those what seems to be incongruent extremes and do so without losing any intensity whatsoever. Ben Nichols, the lead singer, has one of those voices that, while maybe limited in range, just is rife with emotion and pulls you in either way. I think that this album definitely leans a little more on their moodier type material, probably because, like most of us in the last 2 years, the world's been a little bit of a more somber place, and a lot of life changes and been experienced those as well. And this album was written during lockdown, so some of that is reflected in the topic matter, but it's definitely not just a downbeat somber record. It's a nice mix, and if you're a fan of that type of sound, check out Lucero's newest. Moving on to number 18, Royal Blood Typhoons. Now, Royal Blood is a two-man team, drums, bass. Think in terms of, like, what the White Stripes, the Black Keys, things had going on. They were always less blues based and more like hard rock blues, maybe really indebted, I guess, to like your Led Zeppelin types, except done in a two-man format. And it was quite a trick, really, to watch them live, just the size of the sound that they would get with just the two men on stage. Well, with Typhoons, they definitely change up their formula a lot, in fact. And the minimalism that they had come to be known for is replaced with a lot of additional textures, instruments, maybe the distortion tuned down a bit and the synthesizers tuned up. And so longtime fans might look at this album side eye, and maybe it's a little controversial for those fans to whether or not they can accept this change in their group. But to me, it all comes down to the songs, and they have always had a way with very catchy, short, punchy rock songs, and those songwriting chops are still evident here. It's just done in a different style. And so, bring rock and roll to the dance floor. I have no problems with that at all when the material is good. And on Typhoons, it's very good. Maybe a little variety would have helped. It's almost exhausting just how high energy this album is from beginning to end. But if you want a good soundtrack to your party, put on Royal Blood's Typhoons, my number 18 album of the year. Moving on to number 17, we have Sam Fender and 17 Going Under. And I'm not trying to be clever here. It just so happened that my number 17 pick has 17 in the title. But Sam Fender is a young man. This is just his second album. And when he first came out with his debut out of Britain, most of the interviews he gave, it would tend to come around to his love of American rock and roll, and in particular Bruce Springsteen. So of course, that gets my attention as a big Springsteen fan. And there were those influences for sure. The glockenspiel, the saxophone, all of that evident on his first record. But I think that in many ways he improved on his formula here with his sophomore effort. He writes more topically and not just personal, recountings of first person lyrics. He does have those emotional first person songs. I think those are still his strongest. But he's beginning to look and write about the outside world and not just his interior world, which I think shows growth as an artist. And there is growth in his sound. It's kind of funny that I think that this album sounds less like Bruce Springsteen and more like many of the next generation followers of Bruce Springsteen. So if you're a fan of bands like The Killers or The War on Drugs, particularly War on Drugs, there's a song on this Sam Fender album that if you just entered the room, didn't know what you were listening to, you were thinking that it was a War on Drugs song. So if you like that style of rock and roll and those bands, definitely give Sam Fender a chance. He is definitely a talent to watch, and I think that he is only going to get stronger the more he matures as far as his songwriting goes, because it's showing a whole lot of promise 2 albums into a career. We'll end tonight's part of the countdown at number 16, and that is Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats, The Future. If you liked Nathaniel Rateliff when he first came out, is because you were captivated like the rest of us were with that soulful voice. Definitely had a Blues Brothers kind of feel to it with all the horns and the high energy, and because of the success of those early singles and then barn burning live tours where they tore up festival stages around the world, Nathaniel Rateliff elevated himself at a later age, really, as far as an emerging new artist. And really, it was surprising to find out that he had actually come from the coffee houses. Originally a folk singer, a singer-songwriter, and then had sort of changed himself and styled himself into a blues soul shouter, and that's what you got with the Night Sweats. Now, he retracted from that a bit and decided to go back to his roots, did a couple of singer-songwriter style records, and so he's now reemerged with the Night Sweats, and what you have is, I think, a great mix of all the many stylistic influences that he's shown in the past. There's definitely some more intuitive writing on this than what we maybe saw on earlier Night Sweats records, more story-based songs on this as well, but he doesn't shut out the good time party music also. There's a lot of high energy numbers that'll definitely get your toes tapping. So if you like Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats, check out The Future. And that is my number 16 album, and that is tonight's episode. We will pick back up in our next edition at number 15 on the best 30 albums of 2021. Thanks, everybody.